Hello and welcome to Finextra. I'm Emily Horler and I'm here with Jim Wadsworth of Accura, and we're talking about payments fraud. Thank you for joining me, Jim.
Hi.
How is the payments fraud landscape changing, and is fraud getting tougher to fight?
Yes, so for example, UK business lost something like £1 billion last year to various forms of online fraud, and that's growing to about 22% a year right now. That's a big problem, and within that, payments fraud is the biggest component. There are, for example, two use cases alone: invoice redirection fraud and mandate fraud. Mandate fraud's growing at 66% a year, and is therefore a very serious issue. In relation to invoice redirection, at Accura we've put together a product which is now live with one of the country's largest banks to attack that problem. But let me talk to you about how that fraud use case works first. What happens is that a supplier or a fraudster actually pretends to be a legitimate supplier to a business. They write to that business saying, hey, we've moved our bank account, here are the new details. That letter or email looks like it's legitimate, and if, for example, the company rings the phone number on the letter, then they'll go through to a phone number that's controlled by the fraudster. They answer it in the name of the supplier and all that sort of thing. So it's very sophisticated. And unfortunately, later on, when a legitimate invoice turns up from the supplier, sometimes the business sends the money to the wrong account. And it may only come to light when the real supplier later on rings up to say, hey, where's my money? Of course, the business still owes their real supplier the money, but the money's gone elsewhere. And for a small business, that can be catastrophic. So, for example, in East Anglia, not long ago, a manufacturer lost £350,000 to that particular attack, and it's a growing trend. So the product we now have live with one of the country's biggest banks is directly attacking that. We've stopped fraud from happening. Actually, the first one we found was from a public sector entity, which would have lost almost £100,000, and we were able to stop that one. The reason we're able to do that, VocaLink, on behalf of the UK banks, processes the interbank payment transactions, something like 11 billion transactions a year, something like 6 trillion of value each year goes through our systems. We're trusted by the UK banking industry to do that.
So how can data analytics tools be applied to tackle the fraud challenge?
Yeah, so the way that the payments work, for example, a lot of corporate payments go through the BACS service. Those corporates submit payments into VocaLink. We apply sophisticated analytics to those transactions using machine learning and other methodologies to really identify and categorize the payments. And each day we send, having done that very sophisticated analysis, we send to that bank the list of transactions that are potentially of concern. They contact their customer to validate whether the payments are legitimate or not. And where there's a problem, we can stop the payments before the money actually moves. The other interesting thing that's had as a sort of unexpected benefit is that bank's customers are really pleased to kind of receive those calls. They're seeing, it feels like the bank it cares more about them. It's given that bank some significant relationship benefits as well.
Can these tools drive business benefit as well as fraud reduction?
Yeah, for sure. In the context of that fraud service, that bank is seeing benefit in terms of relationship, but more generally, the application of payment of analytics to those payments can drive a whole bunch of other different services. So, for example, Accura, we're working to provide macroeconomic insights. If you're a policymaker, a public policymaker, for example, you're very often dependent on survey information today. As to what's going on in the wider economy. Necessarily, surveys are looking backwards. They're necessarily a sample, whereas the payments stream that VocaLink is responsible for processing, is kind of by definition much more holistic. It's now contemporary, right now, and if we aggregate and anonymize all of that payments data as to what's going, it's basically a very accurate reflection of what's going on in the wider economy. So by using those, applying analytics in that way, we can give public policymakers substantial benefit in terms of what's really happening in the economy right now.
Jim, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching.